You ever wanted to feel like a martial arts master, or maybe you just want to recreate some of your favorite segments from action films? Then boy oh boy do I have the game for you, and definitely the one for me. Sifu released on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and on the Epic Games Store for the price of around $40, and I'm here to walk you through if it's worth purchasing on full price or waiting for that inevitable sell. And honestly, it's, at least to me, 100% worth a full price buy. This game just oozes a cinematic charm that I instantly fell in love with and got really sucked into. I mean, the game starts with you playing as the villain of all people, going around murking people in your clan, sitting his henchmen on everyone in the dojo, and eventually, of course, the inevitable killing of your father, and then for the mini twist, killing you. This makes the player see how dangerous and violent our main villain is, and it's a really cool opening to the game, along with a neat way to show off what this game's gimmick is going to be, which is the revival system through age. More on the aging system once we enter gameplay. Now, is the plot anything groundbreaking for Sifu? No, not really, but it's not really that kind of game. The story does a good enough job to push the vehicle forward and make the player really feel invested in what's going on, whether you want to spare the enemies or outright kill them, and maybe flex those skills and try to get that alternate ending with the spare. But to me personally, why I was so invested, it's really down to that playable intro. It was very smart for you to really sit down and feel the power of these enemies, so once you eventually get to these guys, it makes it all the more satisfying to learn the patterns of these enemies and eventually defeat them. Oh boy, this game is so pretty. Sifu uses this fantastic watercolored aesthetic to everything, and these angular stylized models for characters along with the flat shading for a majority of the game's environments and textures just fits this game's, I would say, minimalist art style quite wonderfully. Another huge compliment goes to the environmental design. Due to how Sifu plays, utilizing the environment to its fullest, things like balconies, walls, tables, etc., it is very important in how combat flows. So because Sifu's environments are laid out the way they are, I get this mini Mirror's Edge-esque dopamine rush where my mind races with all the possibilities and different ways I can dispatch enemies, or sometimes push them away to readjust, whether it be preparing for a parry or a strike or rushing to pick up a weapon. The icing on the cake is the camera work, man. I mean, you've all seen the Oldboy homage and it's truly awesome, but there's a ton of rush sequences where you're jumping from building to building, or the tight camera work when you take on a boss. It's all super great stuff. Plus that soundtrack, bro, like Sifu has non-stop bangers that fit the game's levels perfectly. My favorite sequence is 100% The Club. There's a special point in the soundtrack that syncs to the flicker of lights, and I mean, man, stuff like this is why I love games so much. It's just so good. The only downside from the presentation, ironically, is the camera. Like, I know I just praised it, but sometimes it can be a little finicky and get stuck behind objects or lose its focus during crowd fights, or just, do typical third-person camera jank, and it can be pretty frustrating, especially in a game like this. That being said, it doesn't come up all the time. It only bothered me every once in a while, but I figured I'd mention it just in case. And on that note of frustrating, Sifu is a brutal game, make no mistake about it. Unlike other roguelikes I've played, this one consistently bodied me over and over again and taught me to get good quick. My total playtime for this game was around the 9 to 10 hour mark, if that means anything, despite it only having around 5 to 6 levels. That being said, the game is kind of designed for you to be okay with dying a bunch of times. Allow me to explain. This is where that aging mechanic comes into play. So every time you get clapped, you gain 1 skull, which adds to your death counter. So 20 plus 1 is 21. 21 plus 2 is 23, and so on and so forth. As you age up, you lose a bit of health, but end up dishing out a ton more damage. Not to mention how the game gives you access to a skill tree every death, so you can dump EXP into whatever you need. And oh boy, does Sifu have a robust move list, from combo extenders to focus special moves and even weapon durability increases. You can opt to unlock moves once for a run, or bank enough XP and permanently unlock them for every time you want to replay Sifu. Death isn't the only place to spend XP, to be fair. There's also Jade statues where you can pick a boon Hades style and find things you want to max out, whether it's increasing your structure stability, adding extra focus, or more risky options like recovering stature every time you dodge a move, or parry impacts opponent's stature a ton more, things of that nature. This means every time you run through a level of Sifu, no run will feel particularly the same in terms of gameplay feel. Either you get really lucky and you brute force it, or you get a perfect storm of upgrades and perks that benefit your playstyle, resulting in the most satisfying, best takedowns I've ever dished out in gaming history. The game controls like butter, man. Actions are smooth and responsive, and I never once felt like any of the mistakes I made were particularly my fault. Weaving in and out of combo strings, hitting perfect parries on that orange glowy fist, and setting up for a big stagger and getting a grab, and throwing people off ledges and doing all this crazy stuff, it is never going to get old. And like I said, those environmental takedowns look so sick and give me a lot of Sleeping Dog flashbacks, so my neurons were activated and I was having a big old grin across my face. The enemy types are also pretty diverse. They range from your usual grunts and minions that just throw hands and swing at you, these big body grappler types who let a run up on you and slam you to the floor for a ton of health, and the acrobatic kicking guys who are really dodgy and kind of hard to take on. They always got like weird overheads and just mix-ups that you're just never really ready for. You gotta really get their patterns down. Lastly, there's people that are basically you. They block absolutely everything and rely on a handful of attack streams that either end in a large glowy fist or a large glowy sweep. These guys were the most annoying, to be fair, and especially when coupled with the bow staff, it got very, very punishing. But it's so cool to sit down, grind that pattern out, figure out their playstyle, and of course, inevitably parrying and beating these fellas. Sifu is definitely joining the pantheon of incredible action games, up there with the likes of Devil May Cry 5, Streets of Rage 4, and I can't really think of any others that came out in recent memory, but it's awesome is what I'm getting at. This is a game that rewards patience, strategic movement, and just a tiny little bit of luck, with a really sick risk-reward mechanic going in with the aging system that, to me, never made growing old feel too punishing, but rather a mere misstep on my path to becoming a martial arts master, fit enough to exact vengeance on my father's killer. My recommendation for this game is an absolute must-buy.
I have spent 8 long years preparing for this.
Thank you so much for sticking to the end of this review. If you guys want to see any more of my content, whether it be fighting game related or more video game reviews, there's 2 playlists I'll have and my most recent video I've uploaded. A like, comment, and subscribe goes a long way in supporting the small content creator, and it really would mean a lot. I wish you all the best, make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and I hopefully will see you on the next one.